What's going on? This is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave, the founder of the highest paid part-time job in the world. So we're going to do a video version of a post I did on Facebook, I want to say maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, right? So this is going to be really, I got laws of game as a hashtag, but this is really going to be like a kind of like a basic dark persuasion video in which we're going to kind of talk about how you have been persuaded to believe in this myth of black unity, right? And so the reason why you want to listen to this is because you want to get off, right? You want to get away from believing about this myth of black unity because you may believe that black unification is going to get you where you desire. And I want you to believe that black unification will not get you what you desire. It may get you killed. It may get you incarcerated, but probably the number one thing it's going to do is put you in a situation, right, where you cannot take care of your family. And so if you're about your family and trying to push your family forward, you may want to forget about this myth of black unity. Okay, what I want you to understand is, so we got to deal with beliefs, because the reason why people operate the way they operate is because of how they believe things, right? So that person believes certain things about the world, and because of their beliefs, they operate under those beliefs. So what we do with working class black people and poor black people inside the United States, we teach them this myth of black unity. We teach them that the world or the United States will only be better, and black people's experiences will only be better if all black people became unified and they all pushed in one direction, right? And we teach them, what's going on, Mecca? We teach them this because now we give them something to aspire to and also something to demand from other black people. And then what it does is now it creates a distraction and a lot of contention amongst different black people, because they may see a black person doing something and they say, well, you know what? If these black people just thought about other black people, the situation could be a lot better. And really what it is, in my opinion, it's a way for individuals to avoid leadership, right? It's a way for individuals to avoid leading their groups, for them being responsible for what has happened in their geographical area, right? And then for taking charge of what needs to be taken charge of. Because this is something that is taught to working class and poor black people, so they never organize amongst themselves because they always believe in this myth of black unity. And if we can just get black unity, everything can work in the direction we need it to work in. One of the things I learned from Bobby Steele, right? And I'm not a student of Bobby Steele, but I learned from Bobby Steele, is that when they talked about being a leftist or being a communist or being a socialist, and you start reading these books like Karl Marx, you start reading Lenin, your job as a black person is not to take those books and try to just make that a straight template, right, for what you're trying to do. Your job is to take those books, look at the condition of your people locally, and try to figure out how you could take some of those ideas. What's going on, Akil? What's going on, Miss Brown? How you could take some of those books and apply those theories and those principles to your local situation, right? There was never supposed to be a national situation, right, for the stuff that the Black Panther Party started. And that's something that Bobby Steele talked about, is as they let more people into the party, they started having a lot of issues because it was never part of the core group. It was never supposed to be nationwide and broad like that. It was always supposed to be localized. And then you can be inspired by some of their models and take their models and try to figure out how to make it work in your local area. It was Huey that wanted to spread it out on a national level. We saw how that worked. It really started to cause a lot of challenges and a lot of contradictions in what they was trying to do, where you had a lot of infighting. We as black people, we've been taught this, like, we're going to have a national campaign. I remember when the brother Tavis Smiley used to bring all these black people together and start talking about how, like, we had a national solution to black issues. I forgot what they called it, but it used to be something they used to show on CNN back in the day when Tavis Smiley had a lot of clout in media. The problem with that is we believe that these black thinkers, right, and these black politicians and these black academics have a solutions for problems in areas that they are not at in. So I'm from Orlando, Florida. I'm from down south, right? We have certain situations that we have certain problems that are local to us that may be different from somebody in New Orleans, or may be different from somebody in Oakland, or may be different from somebody in Philly, or may be different from somebody in Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas City, Kansas. So why should somebody in Chicago who's a leader of his group in Chicago, why would he have a solution to our problem if he don't have people down here that have observed and understand our problem? So I don't need to listen to a bunch of people sit around and talk about how we're going to solve black people's issues on the national level, because we're blinded to this live black unity. There's never been a unified black group in the history of the world, right? It's never happened. We weren't unified in Africa. We always had contradictions and issues with each other. That's part of the reason why so many Africans were sold off that continent, whether they were sent to the Middle East, right? Or they were sent to this part of the world, to the West. It was because of contradictions and conflicts amongst different African groups. We come over here, we have those same contradictions and conflicts. One of the biggest reasons is because we came over here as different groups of people. So part of those contradictions and conflicts stopped us from being organized. Did you have some black organized groups? Yes, you did. Did you have some black revolts against slavery? Yes, you did. But what you have to understand is that we're looking at a group of around 40 million, an estimated 40 million black people. I don't understand why anybody would think we're going to get all those people on the same page. And so what we keep doing is we keep telling working class and poor black people, we keep using these words like black unity. We keep using these words like black community, right? And we're trying to make it as if black people, the only way we're going to be successful is have some type of monolithic thinking. And it doesn't work that way. What black people need to do is take responsibility, one, for your family. You got to be a leader amongst your family. That's your first group. Your second, this is my opinion, your second group is your local area, right? Who's the group on your block, right? In which y'all discuss and understand what's things going on. Because the block I'm living on right now, I can go across the street and talk to some people I've known for probably many, many years. I can go down the street and talk to some more people that I've known for many, many years. These people, not only do they know me, they know my family. So on this block, on both sides of the block, we're organized as a group. I don't know what they're doing 3 blocks down the road. That's not my issue. My first issue was what goes on inside this house and then what goes on in my local area.
Chapter 7, Dissension and Weakness. In recent years, the churches and enlightened centers have devoted less attention to dissension than formerly. But in the rural districts and small cities, they have not changed much. And neither in urban communities nor in the country has anyone succeeded in bringing these churches together to work for their general welfare. The militant sects are still fighting one another. And in addition to this, the members of these sects are contending among themselves. The Spirit of Christ cannot dwell in such an atmosphere. Recent experiences show that these dissensions are about as rank as ever. For example, a rural community in which an observer spent 3 weeks a year ago has no church at all. Although 8 to 10 families live there, no church can thrive among them because, with 1 or 2 exceptions, each family represents a different denomination, and the sectarian bias is so pronounced that one will not accept the procedure of the other. Each one loves his fellow man if he thinks as he does, but if his fellow man does not, he hates and shuns him. In another rural community where the same observer recently spent 2 weeks, he found a small and poorly attended Methodist church. Worshiping there one Sunday morning, he counted only 4 persons who lived in the community. Others might have come, for there was no other church for them in that place. But this particular church was not of their faith, and their number was too small to justify the establishment of one of their liking. The support given the unfortunate pastor there was so meager that he can hardly afford to come to them once a month. And consequently, these peasants are practically without spiritual leadership. People who are so directed as to develop such an attitude are handicapped for life. Someone recently inquired as to why the religious schools do not teach the people how to tolerate differences of opinion and to cooperate for the common good. This, however, is the thing which these institutions refuse to do. Religious schools have been established, but they are considered necessary to supply workers for denominational outposts and to keep alive the sectarian bias by which the Baptists hope to outstrip the Methodists, or the latter the former. No teacher in one of these schools has advanced a single thought which has become a working principle in Christendom. And none of these centers is worthy of the name of a school of theology. If one would bring together all of the teachers in such schools and carefully shift them, he would not find in the whole group a sufficient number of qualified to conduct one accredited school of religion. The large majority of them are engaged in imparting to the youth worn out theories of the ignorant oppressor. This lack of qualified teachers in the Negro schools of theology, however, is not altogether the fault of the teachers themselves. It is due largely to the system to which they belong. Their schools of theology are impoverished by their unnecessary multiplication, and consequently, the instructors are either poorly paid or not compensated at all. Many of them have to farm, conduct enterprises, or pastor churches to make a living while trying to teach. Often, then, only the inefficient can be retained under the circumstances. Yet, those who see how they have failed because of these things nevertheless object to the unification of the churches as taught by Jesus of Nazareth, whom they have all ceased to follow because of their sectarian bias obtained from thumb-worn books of misguided American Europeans. Recently, an observer saw a result of this in the sermon of a Negro college graduate trying to preach to a church of the masses. He referred to all the great men in the history of a certain country to show how religious they were, whether they were or not. When he undertook to establish the Christian character of Napoleon, however, several felt like leaving the place in disgust. The climax of the service was a prayer by another miseducated Negro who devoted most of his time to thanking God for Cicero and Demosthenes. Here then was the case of the religion of the pagan handed down by the enslaver and segregationist to the Negro. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Happy Monday. Welcome back to On the Shoulders of Giants. I am Joseph Ward, continuing my reading of Dr. Carter G. Woodson's great book, The Miseducation of the Negro. And this is chapter 7, Dissension and Weakness. And we started off the video with the brother, what is his name? What's this brother's name? He said his name, David Williams. And he has some points I agree with and some points I disagree with when they're talking about Black unity. Now, his overall argument was that Black unity on a nationwide scale shouldn't happen. It's not going to happen and it shouldn't happen. I do agree that it's not going to happen, but I disagree that it shouldn't happen. We do need unity on a nationwide scale. Dr. Claude Anderson said it beautifully. And this system of racism, it's a team sport. Whether you want to be a part of it or not, it's a team sport. You're either going to win as a team or you're going to lose as a team. But either way, we have a chance to make our choice. But he talked about Black unity on a small critical mass, small scale, just in your small community scale, and not even worrying about what's going on 3 blocks away. That's dangerous. And it's embedded with a lot of individualism as well. You'd win as a group. You got to take care of yourself as an individual. Yes, I agree. We need to take care of our homes, because a lot of things he said, I say, got to take care of our homes, got to take care of our communities, got to take care of our neighborhoods. But in my opinion, it is, if we want our community to be better, it is our obligation to make it better. If we want more for ourselves, if we want better for ourselves, if we want to be better protected, if we really want to become a powerful group of people, be able to truly challenge the system of white supremacy, then, hey, we're going to have to become a national team, whether you want to or not, whether you like it or not. And, I'm not asking people who disagree with me to agree with me. All I'm saying is you're either going to win as a team willingly, or you're going to unwillingly lose as a team. We have a choice to make. What is going to be the choice that we make in this matter when it comes to Black unity? I agree. I don't think Black unity on a large scale will happen anytime soon. It may not happen next 10 generations, but it should be something that we are aspiring to, whether he agrees with it or not. Hey, I'm not going to debate the brother about it, but we're just going to agree to disagree. But I thought that was a good clip to going into what we're talking about, the dissension and weakness, because the dissension helps to exploit the weaknesses, and it helps to cause the weaknesses, and it helps to make us weak. Separated people are a weakened people. United people are strong people. When the Europeans came together, they were able to do their thing. The groups, different groups of Europeans, yeah, they take care of their own, but they know how to come together when it's time to come together, right? And that's what we're dealing with. But we're the only ones that are saying, well, we not gonna come together because we don't need to. I understand that we not. I understand some of the not to, because it's not. Most black people don't have the will to do it. Most black people don't care. But I mean, it's not my job to make you care. But to those who do care, we got to understand why unity is important. Yes, he has another good point there, and I've said here, I said it the other day, I don't have any evidence of any total unification of African people throughout the African continent. Right. Right. But what did we learn from the past? I'm not saying that total unification will ever happen, but some kind of unity and unification needs to happen. What did we learn from the past? If we learned nothing, just say we learned nothing. But what did we learn from dealing with our enemies? All other groups of people that we deal with are united people on some level. They have some kind of codified something that they rock with. And they come to us and they can exploit us and divide us even more because we are not unified. But I mean, hey, man, like I said, I'm not trying to convince nobody to do nothing that they don't want to do. If you don't want to, if you don't think unity is something that we should be working toward, cool. But I do, I think overall that is something long term that we should be working for. I agree that on the communal level, we need to make sure we get it together. On a neighborhood level, in your home, it needs to be together. Y'all, we need to be unified. In our families, we need to be unified, because families aren't even unified. Our black families aren't even unified, right? But black unity is something that is a benefit to black people. It's a positive. It's a plus. We're the only groups of people who don't really look at mass unity as something that could actually help us. Once again, I'm not convincing anybody to do nothing. You don't want to do it, don't do it. But eventually, I don't know, man, because the information is out there. I was gonna say eventually we're gonna learn, but I don't know. I don't know if black people even want to learn. I don't know how many of us really want to learn. I don't know how many of us are actually learning. But I'm gonna keep doing my thing, because part of my purpose. That's why I'm here to do what I do. And I know people are listening. So we're gonna keep rocking, we're gonna keep doing, we're gonna keep growing, and we're gonna keep getting better. Right. So chapter 7 is dissension and weakness. Of course, we got our central theme for the chapter, got our key points. What else? Our major takeaways, and then what's that? Yeah, then we're gonna end with our major takeaways after the key points. Is that it? Oh yeah. So yep. So let me start with the central theme of this. Once again, chapter 7, dissension and weakness, our central theme. So Dr. Carter G. Woodson argues that the greatest weakness of the Negro race is internal division, a division created and perpetuated by miseducation. And I would say a division that was heightened by miseducation. Instead of uniting for collective progress, the educated Negro often separates himself from the masses, causing disunity, envy, and mistrust within the race. And that's one of the things he talked about: disunity, envy, and mistrust, because of some of the achievements of others over others, and people asking, "Hey, when you gonna take care of me? Take care." But it's a way to unite and empower each other. strategy to it, right? We got to talk strategy. And of course, I didn't play the whole video, so he might have talked strategy. I'm not going to say he didn't. So he might have talked strategy. But I thought the video was good because, like I said, they got points I agree with and points I disagree with. But the disunity, envy, and mistrust is embedded deep within the fabric of Black America. It's been embedded for the longest. It was part of the controlling of the slaves to get us to distrust each other and trust the masters, right? So it's embedded within us, but it's also exploited even more and nurtured by the system of white supremacy. So the brother has a great conversation. And this, I might actually take this video and make it a longer conversation for one of my live shows on like a Tuesday or something. So y'all let me know if y'all want me to take this video and we go through the whole video and kind of analyze what he's saying, because he has some good points. He has points I agree with and points I disagree with. But in my opinion, overall, whether it's on a small scale or medium scale or large scale, Black unity is needed. Black empowerment is needed. We need to make sure that we create a system to uplift each other in a proper way, so we can be unified and we can overcome a lot of the dissension that we have. So our first key point, let me run through the key points first. So the first key point is miseducation creates division, not leadership. The second one is infighting and jealousy weakens progress. The third is the imported model of leadership, propaganda and false heroes, organizational weakness, lack of a common vision, dependency and external control, and the remedy, re-education and racial solidarity. So the first key point is miseducation creates division, not leadership. Please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, and share if you enjoy this content that I'm bringing to you. If you think this content is worthy, it's purposeful, it's useful, it's helpful for the community, you're learning from this, please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, share, hit that hype button, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Let's run these numbers up. So the first key point: the so-called educated Negro was taught to despise his own people and to imitate the habits, culture, and values of the white elite. We've covered that, right? Rather than using his education to uplift the community, he uses it to separate himself from it. Take care of yourself, and you take care of yourself by making sure you are closer to the whites, closer to the ones that you feel have the ability to uplift you. The separation leads to a lack of trust and respect between the educated and the uneducated, between the rich and the poor, between the leaders and the people, right? But that is by design that we're learning, right? And that's one of the reasons we're reading this book, because that was by design to have the separation. But the miseducation, or the programming rather, is to make sure that we are not seeing eye to eye. Is to make sure that we don't think about ourselves as being one. Because why would I want to be a part of something with those type of people? But that was by design. So let's get back into the reading. Once again, keep reminding you, I'm reading from a PDF, not necessarily the books. I don't know which page this is, but it's chapter 7, Dissension and Weakness. And I'm starting to where it says, returning from the table where he had placed his offering. So here we go. Please hit that like button once again. Returning from the table where he had placed his offering in a church on a Sunday morning, not long thereafter, this observer saw another striking example of this failure to hit the mark. He stopped to inquire of his friend, Jim Minor, as to why he had not responded to the appeal for a collection. What? Said Jim. I ain't giving that man nothing. That man ain't fed me this morning. I ain't feeding him. This was Jim's reaction to a scholarly sermon entitled The Humiliation of the Incarceration. During this discourse, too, the member had much to say about John Knox, Orthodox, and another of the communications bowing at the shrine inquired of the observer later as to who this John Knox Orthodox was and where he lived. The observer could not answer all of the inquiries thus evoked, but he tried to explain the best he could that the speaker had studied history and theology. This was the effect this sermon had on the earnest congregation. The minister had the minister had attended a school of theology, but had merely memorized words and phrases, which meant little to him and nothing to those who heard his discourse. The school in which he had been trained followed the traditional course for ministers, devoting most of the time to dead languages and dead issues. He had not given attention to polytheism, monotheism, and the doctrine of the Trinity. He had studied also the philosophical basis of the Caucasian dogma, the elements of that theology, and the schism by which the fanatics made religion a football and multiplied wars only to moisten the soil of Europe with the blood of the unoffending men. This minister had given no attention to the religious background of the Negroes to whom he was trying to preach. He knew nothing of their spiritual endowment and their religious experiences as influenced by their traditions and environment, in which the religion of the Negro has developed and expressed itself. He did not seem to know anything about their present situation. These honest people, therefore, knew nothing additional when he had finished his discourse. As one communicant pointed out, there once had not been supplied, and they wondered where they might go to hear a word which had some bearing upon the life which they had to live. Not long ago, when the author was in Virginia, he inquired about a man who was once a popular preacher in that state. He is here, they said, but he is not preaching now. He went off to school, and when he came back, the people could not understand what he was talking about. Then he began to find fault with the people because they could not come to church. He called them froggy because they did not appreciate his new style of preaching and the things he talked about. The church went down to nothing, and the family left it and took up farming. And so let's get into our second key point. Infighting and jealousy weakens progress. All right. Woodson notes that many Black leaders of his day were concerned with personal recognition, position, and prestige than with general racial uplift. I'm gonna say that again. Woodson notes that many of Black leaders of his day were more concerned with personal recognition, position, and prestige than with genuine racial uplift. And so I thought about that, and I think about that when I'm thinking about the brother's video, because I understand overall some of the points he's getting at from what we've watched. But then I think about that and more concerned with their personal recognition, position, and prestige and uplift, right? Rather than the whole, because it's easier for me to uplift me than the whole. I said it before, and I'm gonna lean in on. I believe, and I know a lot of Black people are afraid of the hard work that it would take for us to make sure that we are a better, more powerful, more structured, unified group of people here in America. Instead of collaborating, they compete, forming separate organizations, movements, and schools that duplicated effort but diluted effectiveness. And that goes against one of our codes of conduct, no duplication of efforts, right? If you find somebody doing something that you had the idea to do, go support them in what they do. But because so many Black people are trying to be the one, they're going to compete with each other and try to one up each other, which causes more dissension and makes us weaker. He states that this behavior was a symptom of miseducation, a psychological dependency on white validation and control that prevented unity. And we see it all day, every day within our communities, especially within the religious communities, right? Because we talk about the communities who have the most churches that have the most dissension and are the weakest. So yeah. Actually, let me get to another key point. So this one is the imported model of leadership. Leadership among Black people often mirrored the European model of hierarchy and domination rather than service and cooperation. I'm going to read that one more again. Leadership among Black people often mirrored the European model of hierarchy and domination rather than service and oration. Black people, black people, black people.
Emotional damage.
We got to do and be better, but it's a part of the programming that we have. It's a part of the programming. They scrambled our minds up in the blender and spit us out. And here we are, what we are, this insane group of people out here just doing stuff. I don't know what we're going to do about that. So the Negro leader often viewed himself as superior to the masses and acted as if the people needed to be controlled or civilized, not empowered. That goes back to the conversation from the Saturday Live. The Negro leader has the same mindset as the white supremacist. Go back to the conversation of the Saturday Live when the white guys were saying that they believe that whites or Europeans or any white group need to control black countries because they do it better. They're better at running countries and civilizations than black people. This mindset, Woodson argues, prevented the development of authentic grassroots leaderships rooted in community needs and cultural understanding because most of our leaders are given. And if basically that's it. Most of our leaders are given, and the grassroots are never supported by the masses or even by a smaller group of people the way they need to be. But the ones who do not have our best interests and the ones who want white validation are always supported. In a rural community, I'm back to the reading. So in a rural community, then a preacher of this type must fail unless he can organize separately members of the popular Methodist and Baptist churches who go into the ritualistic churches or establish certain refined Methodist or Baptist churches catering to the talented 10th. For lack of adequate numbers, I'm going to read that again. In a rural community, because that goes to what I just talked about. In a rural community, then a preacher of this type must fail unless he organized separately members of the popular Methodist and Baptist churches who go into the ritualistic churches or establish certain refined Methodist or Baptist churches catering to the talented 10th. Because that's the only way he's going to get real support, is being a part or being associated catering to the talented 10th, right? For lack of adequate numbers, however, such churches often fail to develop sufficient force to do very much for themselves or for anyone else. On Sunday morning, then, their pastors have to talk to the benches. While these truncated churches go higher in their own atmosphere of self-satisfaction, the mentally undeveloped are left to sink lower because of the lack of contact with the better trained. If the latter exercise a little more judgment, they will be able to influence those people for good by gradually introducing advanced ideas. But that's not what the mindset is. The mindset is on the white world. Because our highly educated people do not do this, large numbers of Negroes drift into churches led by the uneducated ministers who can scarcely read and write. These preachers do not know much of what is found in school books and can hardly make use of a library in working out a sermon. But they understand that people with whom they deal, and they make such of use the human laboratory that sometimes they become experts in solving vexing problems and meeting social needs. They would be much better preachers if they could have attended a school devoted to the development of the mind rather than cramming it with extraneous matters which have no bearing on the task which lies before them. Unfortunately, however, very few of such schools of religion now exist. For lack of intelligent guidance, then the Negro church often fulfills a mission to the contrary for that which it was established, because the Negro church is such a free field and it is controlled largely by the Negroes themselves. It seems that practically all the incompetents and undesirables who have been barred from other walks of life by race, prejudice, and economic difficulties have rushed into the ministry for the exploitation of the people. Honest ministers who are trying to do their duty then find their task made difficult by these men who stop to practically everything conceivable. Almost everybody of the lowest type may get into the Negro ministry. The Methodists claim that they have strict regulations to prevent this, but their net draws in proportionately as many undesirables as one finds among the Baptists. As an evidence of the depths to which the institution has gone, a resident of the Cincinnati recently reported a case of this exploitation by a railroad man who lost his job and later all his earnings in a game in a den of vice in that city. To refinance himself, he took an old black frock coat and a Bible and went to the heart of Tennessee, where he conducted at various points a series of protracted meetings, which netted him 299 converts to the faith and $400 in cash. He was enabled thereby to return to the game in Cincinnati, and he is still in the lead. Other such cases have frequently reported. Propaganda and false heroes is our next key point. That's wild, man. But it just out here straight. You ain't never met Dr. Martin Luther King. Just straight line to people, man. But that's what is happening with our community. We are preying upon ourselves. The media and white controlled educational systems promoted black leaders who upheld the status quo rather than those who changed it. I'm going to read that again. The media and white controlled educational systems promoted black leaders who upheld the status quo rather than those who challenged it. Many educated Negroes began to model themselves after these safe examples of leadership, the ones approved by white institutions. As a result, genuine thinkers, radicals, and community organizers were ignored, discredited, and marginalized, which still is happening to this day. The ones who are genuine, the ones who are really, really, really out here in the community making it happen, doing what they need to do, don't get no support. And all the scammers, we've been talking about it on this channel, all the scammers get all the support. And the genuine ones have to pay for it. Large majority of Negro preachers of today then are doing nothing more than to keep up the medieval hellfire scare, which the whites have long since abandoned to emphasize the humanitarian trend in religion through systematized education. The young people of the Negro race could be held in a church by some such program, but the Negro's Christianity does not conceive of social uplift as a duty of the church, and consequently, Negro children have not been adequately trained in religious matters to be equal to the social demands upon them. Turning their back on medievalism, then these untrained youth think nothing of taking up moonshining, gambling, and racketeering as occupations, and they find great joy in smoking, drinking, and fornicating as diversions. They cannot accept the old ideas, and they do not understand the new. What the Negro church is, however, has been determined largely by what the white man has taught the race by precept and example. We must remember that the Negroes learned their religion from the early white Methodists and Baptists who evangelized the slaves and the poor whites when they were barred from the proselytizing and aristocracy. The American white people themselves taught Negroes to specialize unduly in the praise the Lord, hallelujah worship. In the West Indies, among the Anglicans and among the Latin people, Negroes do not show such emotionalism. They are cold and conservative. Some of the American whites, moreover, are just as far behind in this subject as are the Negroes who have had less opportunity to learn better. While in Miami, Florida, not long ago, the author found two interracial holiness churches that the following was a third or fourth white. The whites joined wholeheartedly with the Negroes in their holy rolling, and some of them seemed to be rollers, not holy. A few months ago in Huntington, West Virginia, where the author was being entertained by friends, The party was disturbed throughout the evening by the most insane outbursts of white worshipers in a church of God across the street. They were daily indulged in such worshiping and screaming in unknown tongues that the Negroes have had to report them to the police as a nuisance. The author has made a careful study of the Negro church, but has never known Negroes to do anything to surpass the performance of those heathens. The American Negroes' ideas of morality, too, were borrowed from their owners. The Negroes could not be expected to raise a higher standard than their aristocratic governing class that teemed with sin and vice. This corrupt state of things did not easily pass away. The Negroes have never seen any striking examples among the whites to help them in matters of religion. Even during the colonial period, the whites claimed that their ministers sent to the colonies by the Anglican Church, the progenitor of the Protestant Episcopal Church in America, were a degenerate class that exploited the people for money, to waste it in racing horses and drinking liquor. Some of these ministers were known to have illicit relations with women and therefore winked at the sins of the officers of their church who sold their own offspring by slave women. So let me get to my other key point, my next key point. A lack of common vision is the next key point. Because education had divorced the Negro from his own history and culture, the race lacked a shared mission or purpose, and that's what we lack now. Going back to the initial video, we lack a shared mission or purpose. The gentleman in the video, David Williams, speaks against a shared purpose. I say we need to have a shared purpose, a shared mission. Racism, once again, is a team sport. Whether you want to acknowledge it or accept it or not, it's a team sport. You're going to win as a team, unified, or you're going to lose as a team, disunified, disjointed, disunited. Some pursued economic gain, others sought political power, and others sought cultural acceptance. But there was no unified goal for racial progress, which we still do not have. Now, we don't have a unified anything. Woodson stresses that until Black people develop a shared sense of identity and purpose, their collective efforts will remain fragmented and weak. Although the author was born 10 years after the Civil War, the morals and religion of that regime continued even into his time. Many of the rich or well-to-do white men belonging to the churches in Buckingham County, Virginia, indulged in polygamy. They raised one family by a white woman and another by a colored or poor white woman. Both the owner of the largest slate quarry and the proprietor of the largest factory in that county lived in this fashion. One was an outstanding Episcopalian and the other was a distinguished Catholic. One day, the foreman of the factory, a polygamous deacon of the local white Baptist church, called the workmen together at noon for a short memorial service in honor of Parson Taylor, for almost half a century, the pastor of the large white Baptist church in that section. The foreman made some remarks on the life of the distinguished minister, and then all saying, "Shall we meet beyond the river?" But to save his life, the author could not restrain himself from wondering all that time whether the foreman's wife or colored paramour would greet him on the other side, and what a conflict there would be if it happened to get to the old-fashioned hair pulling. In spite of his libertine connections, however, this foreman believed that he was a Christian, and when he died, the eulogists commended his soul to God. Some years later, when the author was serving his 6 years apprenticeship in the West Virginia coal mines, he found at Nuttleburg a very faithful vestryman of the white Episcopal Church at that point. He was one of the most devout from the point of view of his co-workers, yet privately, the man boasted of having participated in the most brutal lynching of the 4 Negroes, who thus met their doom at the hands of an angry mob in Clifton Forge, Virginia in 1892. It is very clear then that if the Negro got their conception of religion from the slaveholders, libertines, and executors and red rummers, there may be something wrong about it, and it will not hurt to investigate it. It has been said that the Negroes who do not connect the morals with religion it has been said that the Negroes do not connect morals with religion. The historian would like to know what race or nation does such a thing. Certainly the whites with whom the Negroes have come in contact have not done so. And that is the end of chapter 7. So let's get to this next key point. Dependency and external control. And that's our last key point. Even in their attempts to organize, many Black leaders and groups look to white philanthropists, politicians, and institutions for approval and funding because we have not created enough for ourselves. This dependence made it impossible to develop truly independent movements because outside influence always came with control. Woodson insists that true liberation requires self-sufficiency, self-definition, and internal unity. So the remedy, re-education, and racial solidarity. Dr. Woodson concludes that the only cure for this dissension is proper education, education that connects the individual to his community, history, and purpose. And that's why we have to be independent educators to our people, our children, and educating them through an African-centered or Black American-centered framework. He calls for a new type of leadership, humble, service-oriented, and rooted in the love for the people. And the people have to support those people. This leadership must emphasize cooperation, not competition, building institutions, not seeking individual fame. And those people have to be supported. So those are the people who are doing the real work. Major takeaways from this chapter is miseducation created division, distrust, and egoism among Black leaders and communities. True leadership is defined by service, unity, and integrity, not imitation of white leadership styles. The Black race's weakness lies not in inferiority, but in disunity and psychological conditioning. Liberation requires re-education, collective identity, and independent thought. And in my notes, I have a quote. It says, the same education that should have developed the Negro into a constructive force for his people has instead taught them to distrust them, to separate them, and to seek approval for others. And that's paraphrase from Dr. Carter G. Woodson. I'm reading one more time. The same education that should have developed the Negro into a constructive force for his people have instead taught him to distrust them, to separate from them, and to seek approval from others. Food for thought. Food for thought. You don't have to agree with it, but what outcomes do we really want for ourselves? And I'm going to leave it at that. Please hit that like button, comment, subscribe, share. I am Joseph Ward. This is On the Shoulders of Giants. And I appreciate everybody who supports this channel, everybody who watches this channel. If you are new, thank you. Welcome. Hit that subscribe button. You're going to love it over here. You can join this channel as a member. Once again, you're going to love it over here. I'm going to keep dropping this information, keep doing what I do. Y'all have a great Monday, and I'll see y'all next time. Catch that next video coming up. Peace out.